What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here. Sorry for the delay in content. I'll get to that in a minute. And also, Adora was here, but then she had the zoomies, so she ran away and is off playing. So that's why she's not here. But I'm going to provide you a news catch-up video here. A little bit, I mean, I haven't made a video in 2, maybe even 3 weeks at this point. So I wanted to just try and condense at least what I think are kind of the major things that have happened or been announced or shown off into one video. So we're going to talk a little bit about the D&D movie, as some footage was shown. Unfortunately, I don't have it to show you, but there was some footage shown, and some people's thoughts on what the movie might actually be like. We have rules on Spelljammer ship combat and things of that nature that people were able to extract from the D&D DM screen images. We have new, possibly Dark Sun in a form, to take that with a grain of salt. Free books from D&D Beyond, as well as the acquisition from D&D Beyond officially having gone through. And Mordenkainen's Monsters of the Multiverse has officially launched in the wild. You can go pick it up individually without having to buy the box set. But because things have been just so crazy, if you missed it, I had COVID from post-PAX, and I've been really struggling to get back into doing content creation, and with my regular day job keeping me as busy as it has been lately, plus just the lack of energy from COVID, I just haven't had it. So I've been trying to do whatever I can to save time and try to build back up energy, and that's actually why I'm excited to talk to you about the sponsor for today's video, Factor. Factor is a, sent to your house meal box that is, you know what? I filmed myself unboxing it and then making the stuff. Why don't I just let that speak for itself? My Factor meals arrived, so let's go ahead and open these up and see what we're working with. So we've got massive ice packs here. And yeah, we have our individual Factor meals here. Fresh, never frozen meals, chef prepared, dietitian approved. We have a variety of different meals here. Heat and eat in 2 minutes. So this is the beef, spinach, and mozzarella bowl. Instructions, you can do either microwave or oven, because I want to do something quick so I can get back to what I'm working on. We're going to do microwave. So it says remove the meal from the sleeve, and then pierce the plastic film. So we're going to go ahead and just pop this in the microwave. Check back in 2 minutes. All right, 2 minutes are up, out of the microwave. We'll let it sit here for 2 minutes, then we're gonna eat it. So I've got the food here in front of me. It's time to eat. I can tell you, having sampled this for a little bit, that the food is actually really good. And I mean, it solves a lot of the problems that I have as a parent, as a content creator, and as someone with a full-time job. I don't need to think about what my next meal is gonna be. I have to think about what my meal, where it's going to come from. It removes the idea of fast food, which is something that, honestly, we rely on pretty heavily in this family because we have 2 kids and we're always busy and things like that, and that's just quick and easy. It's no mess, no cleaning up of really any dishes. You have one utensil. The food is healthy. You can get a variety of different options for vegan-friendly, vegetarian-friendly, keto-friendly. And looking at, aside, again, like I said, from the taste, and limiting all of the other factors like timing and things of that nature, the ingredients and looking at the nutritional facts, there's no gotchas. It's one tray. It's not giving you anything funky where you get one of these meals and it's 2 serving sizes or anything of that nature. And it's not any weird food ingredients that you don't know what they are when you read the ingredients. They're actual food, not any kinds of things you can't pronounce. So use my link or go to go.factor75.com and use the code POGNERD120 for $120 off. You'll find a link at the top of the video description as well as a pinned comment. Thank you again to Factor for sponsoring this video. So with that being said, let's go ahead and dive into some of the stuff we talked about. So as I said, Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves is the title of the D&D movie that's coming out it's said March 3rd, 2023. And it says at CinemaCon, they actually played about 30 seconds of the film. Now, reminder, we didn't get to see this. We thought we were going to maybe see something during the D&D Direct. Instead, what we saw was the reveal of the name of the movie.
So again, we weren't at CinemaCon. I wasn't. The folks writing this article, a lot of folks weren't there, but they said that the production quality of a top-notch historical epic. This is what Deadline said. And then it says a slash film has high praise for I want to say it's Roger Jean. I don't know how you pronounce his name. Page, the guy from Bridgerton, who could be seen wearing snazzy fantasy armor. But in the ensuing days, it seems some actual D&D players were there too. A user from N-World was in attendance and had some juicier details about what can be seen in the scattered footage throughout the reel. He said, it's what you expect from a Marvel theatrical release. That's big praise, I would say, as well as catching glimpses of Chris Pine and Michelle Rodriguez on horseback and the appearance of a displacer beast. So, either way, take that with a grain of salt, but I thought that was interesting that we finally got some news about what to expect. And I guess one of the things that I had talked about when it was announced is this has been like in post-production, I think for about the past year and a half, maybe even 2 to 3 full years of post-production, which I guess that means you're going to lean heavily into post-processing and CG effects. And while I, am a fan of practical effects, as I'm sure a lot of other folks are as well, they can be done very well. And if this is being likened to a Marvel production, that's pretty awesome. I don't know what kind of budget went into the film, but either way, I'm excited. I'm hopefully optimistic about this movie. I've seen the other ones, and I think that speaks for itself. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into what we can find on the Spelljammer screen. We'll also say thank you to Bella of Lost Souls for putting out these articles on it, or at least consolidating it in a way that I was able to find it. So you can see here, this is sort of the box set, opinions notwithstanding about Spelljammer. Again, these 3 books do not look like 64-page novel or 64-page books. These look like full-size books, but someone basically zoomed in and pulled the information off of that. So we can kind of see it here, and then it's expanded down here, right? So it says ship encounters. That's what we can see here is a percentile table. And it says you can roll to find random spelljamming ship encounters. Starts with a D100 ship encounter as well as a new wrinkle, the attitude roll. This includes rolls like 1d10 plus 2 or a d12, presumably will correspond to an attitude chart to determine whether these ships are friendly, neutral, or hostile. So here we have a couple, right? So it says attitude roll, Bombard Leviathan, captained by someone who is a GIF warlord and GIF shipmates, Scorpion ship claws of H, things are kind of cut off. Goblinoid ship captained by a hobgoblin and crewed by 1 bugbear, the first mate, 8 hobgoblins and 2 hobgoblin priests, and so on. I don't think I need to read through all of these, but you can see that this is kind of giving you an idea of who's running the ship. Ship to ship starting distance, right? If you are going to be having a space battle, you need to know your distances. So, and it has a couple of distance here, 250 feet long range for ballista, mangonels, short bows, long bows, light crossbows, and heavy crossbows, 500 feet long range for longbows and mangonels, too far for ballista and crossbows, and 1,000 feet beyond the range of most ranged weapons. There may possibly be specialty weapons, energy weapons, or the like contained within Spelljammer that will be able to hit that longer range. Crashing. It says this is also visible and pretty simple. Presumably there's more cut off, but basically, if you're going to crash your ship into somebody, it should deal damage. So it says size of creature or object struck. We have some different size based damages there. 16d10 if it's a gargantuan size ship, which is pretty nuts. Shipboard tasks. It says during the uneventful part of a voyage, the captain of a spelljamming ship can put crew members to work in several ways. If a character is looking for a job to do, or if captain wants to keep a character busy, roll in the shipboard tasks table to determine what needs to be done. So we have a d12. 1 is scrape barnacles off the hull, scrub pots, swab the deck, and then we also have cargo here. And then again, it doesn't really look like that's something we can fully read from what was shown there. But to randomly determine what in the cargo hold of a spelljamming ship, roll 1d8 times on the cheap cargo table and a d4 minus 1 times on the expensive cargo table. So this is essentially like a horde table, like a dragon horde, but for the cargo of a spelljammer ship. If a cargo container is locked, at least 1 crew member, typically the captain, has the key. The character can try to unlock it, making a DC 20 dexterity check. Next up is this article from comicbook.com, which is the reference to Spelljammer, to Dark Sun that I mentioned. So this was because in the free monsters here, it says several Dark Sun monsters are set to appear in the upcoming Spelljammer campaign, which is raising questions about the status of that as a classic campaign setting. A reminder, we had heard from Ray Winninger, and I've covered this in videos in the past, that we were possibly going to be getting at least 2 classic campaign settings coming back. I believe it may have been 3, or a possible tease of a cameo of 1. We know that Dragonlance is one of the settings, which is coming out later this year, and obviously Spelljammer is the other. It says, last month, WotC announced they were publishing a 3-book box set titled Spelljammer's Adventure in Space, which will serve to reboot blah, blah, blah. Last month, Wizards released its first Monstrous Compendium, a free online support containing 10 monsters tied to Spelljammer. It's got a mixture of classic and new monsters, but it also says it includes the Nightmare Beast, a monster that originated in Athos, the world featured in Dark Sun. A recent preview of the Spelljammer-themed miniatures, set to be released by WizKids, will feature a Braxet and a Surin, 2 monsters that also appeared in the Dark Sun campaign setting. One of the core concepts of Spelljammer is that players can travel between different worlds using magical-powered ships, which theoretically means that a player can travel from Oerth, the location of the Greyhawk campaign setting, to Toro for the Forgotten Realms, so it's entirely possible that they could travel to Athos via a spelljamming ship. And then it goes on to say, last year, and we mentioned here, D&D Design Studio head Ray Winninger noted that a classic campaign setting would make a cameo appearance in 2022. Based on what we've seen from Spelljammer so far, it looks like Dark Sun could at least get a fleeting mention later this year. Whether that means that we'll see a fuller Dark Sun release in 2023 remains to be seen, but Wizards of the Coast did note that another classic campaign setting was under development for a new product release. So, there you go. In a update, a D&D Beyond update, they announced it here. I'm not going to play the video, but basically starting tomorrow, the 19th of May, you'll actually be able to pick up a copy of Acquisitions Incorporated, that book via D&D Beyond for free, which is pretty awesome. It was basically, they made a lot of puns about how the acquisition of D&D Beyond to Wizards of the Coast was happening and basically fulfilled. And as such, they were giving away Acquisitions Incorporated, which I think kind of makes sense. And then I went to D&D Beyond to see if I could find anything on that. And there's actually nothing about it on the website anywhere easily that I could find. But I also wanted to take a look at this FAQ from Monsters of the Multiverse, which brought up something that I meant to cover earlier, but again, I just didn't have the energy to do so, was that Mordenkainen's Monsters of the Multiverse effectively erases Tasha's Cauldron, I'm sorry, not Tasha's Cauldron, effectively erases Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes and Volo's Guide to Monsters. Now, this is nothing that we didn't know, but the tricky part of that is, if you didn't own those books digitally via D&D Beyond, they are no longer accessible to you. If you had those books previously, you still retain them, but for the most part, if you're looking for the monsters or the races, and you don't care about them being updated, you have no downside, right? You have all of the newly updated stat blocks for those monsters. Now, if for some reason you wanted to use the old stat blocks and you didn't have those older books, then you'd be stuck having whatever the new version is. Same thing with the races. What I think is tricky, though, is that Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes contained all of the Tiefling sub-races. If you recall, in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, I think I can go ahead and pull it up because I should still have access to it. So if I go to Mordenkainen's, actually, no. Oh, there it is. It's listed here. If I show you on D&D Beyond, we go down here, you see it's discontinued. These two right here. But if we go ahead and click this, I just wanted to show you what I was talking about. It does list it now that as legacy content. But right here, where is it? Tiefling sub-races. Okay. Remember, as it stands right now, prior to this, we had a couple of Tiefling variants in the Sword Coast Adventures Guide, which is essentially all but discontinued. And the player's handbook. And this expanded to allow different tieflings. Typically, it was based around Asmodeus or Asmodeus, however you pronounce it. That's where most of the tieflings were, at least in the Forgotten Realms, designed in his image. And there's lore and things that explain why that is. But they had, if you had sort of a different ancestor in a different fiend of some kind, whether it be Despater, Fierna, or so on, it would give you different options. And this was really, really cool at the time because it allowed you to break up how you know, in the player's handbook, your Tiefling was +2 charisma, +1 intelligence. This allowed you to change that up and pick different options. It also allowed you to swap and have different spells. So you would get a new cantrip and you'd get 2 other spells. At third level, you'd get a spell, usually cast at a 2nd level, and then at 5th level, you'd get a 2nd level spell of some kind. And you can see there are a large variety, right? Beelzebub, Despater, Fierna, Glacia, Levistus, Mammon, Mephistopheles, and Zariel. All of these had interesting, and the spells I thought were very interesting because they provided a lot of variety. Some of them could get you attacking cantrips, some defensive abilities, invisibility, mage hand. The Zariel one had a lot of cool smite spells, which is a way to get those outside of being a paladin. Really cool stuff. That is no longer available, in theory, to anyone. So if you did not get Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes before, I guess, today, when the acquisition officially went live and Mordenkainen's Monsters the Multiverse came out, those sub-races no longer exist for you, which is weird. If you already have the book, like I do, as I was able to show you there, I have access to those. Additionally, any of the lore that was associated with the various creatures from Volo's Guide to Monsters. Now, one of the reasons, if you missed this, that Wizards of the Coast cut all of that lore, which was the whole first chunk of Volo's Guide to Monsters, was flavored in terms of a Forgotten Realms perspective. As Volo was from the Forgotten Realms, you were getting Forgotten Realms lore. They are clearly trying to open this thing up to be more setting agnostic and apparently multiversal, with the multiverse and spell jamming and things like that, making it more accessible to other areas. So coloring everything towards Forgotten Realms lore makes less sense. But I still enjoy that because if I'm going to run a game in the Forgotten Realms, I'd like to know that. I'd also like to know that for the other worlds as well, but that we won't have that. So those 2 books have essentially gone away. I would also say I don't know if they're going to stop printing them physically. So if you're worried about that, I would say go and pick up physical copies if you can out in the world, if you're able to do so. Again, but as I said, if you didn't have them already, the digital copies are gone. So let's go ahead and take a look at that FAQ just to see if there's anything. We don't really need to know what it is. We already know what Monsters of the Multiverse is. What is going to happen into all my existing content that I already have? You won't need to take any action on any older content. It'll just now have the legacy tag next to it, which I think is great. Again, but only useful if folks have that stuff already. You'll also see race naming conventions updated to denote legacy on the races and a legacy badge next to old sub-races. Will 2 versions of every monster be maintained on D&D Beyond? If you own the older content and purchase the new content, yes, you will have 2 different versions of the content. Older content will be designated as legacy, which I will say I do appreciate. It's nice to see that they didn't just cut those out entirely and say, here's the new content, take it or leave it. Again, beneficial for the folks who have it. And again, maybe you do want to bounce back and forth. Maybe you want to do your own comparisons to see what was changed. Something that I will likely be covering in the coming weeks, trying to see what the differences were and why they updated and changed things. So having access to the legacy content makes my life a hell of a lot easier. Will the character races in Monsters of the Multiverse be available in addition to the old versions? Character races presented in the new book are new versions of the existing races. Purchasing Monsters of the Multiverse will not replace old character races, but rather will provide new ones with updated compared to the originals. If you want to use the new Tabaxi, use the new book. If you want to purchase the Tabaxi character race from book's additional purchase in the marketplace, if you already own that race has been updated in the new title. You will continue to have access to them in their current state. The character race will not be changed or updated except to designate it as legacy content. Will I be able to share my older content with folks in a campaign, which is also important? Yes. You can. Great answer. Will I still be able to access characters created using Volo's Guide to Monsters and Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes? Yes. Also good news. If I want one of my characters to use the new content, but not another, will that be possible? If the Dungeon Master allows it, yes. If the game hasn't started yet, this would be the perfect time to bring this up in a Session 0. So yes, I could use new Tabaxi and you could use old Tabaxi. I built an encounter with monsters from Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes and Volo's Guide. Will that still be usable after Monsters of the Multiverse comes out on the 17th? Yes. Will I have to purchase Monsters of the Multiverse on D&D Beyond, even if I already own Volo's and Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes? Whatever book content you already own on each digital platform will still be accessible for your use, and to gain access to both the new and updated content, you will need to purchase Monsters of the Multiverse. So it's not auto-updating. I feel like some of us are having sort of Eberron flashbacks, but either way. Can I still buy them? And it says starting on May 16th, you can acquire the streamlined and up-to-date creatures from Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. On May 17th, Volo's Guide to Monsters and Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes will be discontinued from our digital marketplace. I wanted to get this video out before that happened to just give you a warning, but here I am reporting on it after the fact. And that is pretty much it. It is now available, like I said, for purchase out in the wild at your local game store, probably at places like Barnes & Noble. I know some folks are able to find them at Target and Walmart and other things like that. Amazon as well. Again, I always try to say if you can support your friendly local game store, go for it. But at the same time, I also understand that not everybody has one. And sometimes you'll get it cheaper on places like D&D Beyond in the digital format, officially now sponsored by Wizards of the Coast as the acquisition is complete. Or, you know, Amazon, you can often find deals and things to get things cheaper. So there you go, folks. Did I miss any news coming up or over the past couple weeks? I didn't see anything that came across my desk that was too shocking. I did want to also apologize for not getting a chance to cover the survey for the Heroes of Krynn Revisited. I wanted to do that, but I went to go check for it now, and it's down. They pulled the survey down, so I didn't get a chance to do that. So anyway, I'm back. So consider Nerd Immersion back on the regularly scheduled grind. I have so many emails that I've responded to. We have a ton of content. I just got a huge package of WizKids minis in today with all of their Fizban's Treasury of Dragon stuff, including the Draco Hydra, the Elder Brain Dragon. I have a bunch of other minis and stuff from other cool folks that you haven't seen so far. I'm also in the process of putting together a bunch of different live streams that I'm working towards. I'm working towards an Aliens RPG live stream that I'll be playing in. I'm working into reviving the Rod of Seven Parts campaign that Jordan will be running. And I'm working on setting up and running a Power Rangers RPG, as well as covering that book to give you a little bit of heads up as to what goes on with that content. And real discussions are happening about possibly going to making this a full-time thing. Yes, I know that sounds scary, and it is. I'm having more discussions about that with my wife and figuring out things of that nature and what I can and can't do and what other supplemental forms of income I can do, and then like really needing to devote more time to Patreon and really jacking that up and possibly providing weekly releases of things on my Patreon, DM's Guild stuff, other contracts and things of that nature. So more Nerd Immersion coming strong for the rest of 2022. Fingers crossed. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.